Okay, welcome everyone to ANC 34G's special meeting tonight. This is a meeting that's covering only one topic. It's the recommendations from the Commission's Task Force on Racism. This is a continuation of our meeting from January 25th, when we got through part of the recommendations, but not all of them. And so we rescheduled for the remainder as far as we can get tonight. And as with all of our meetings since April, we're again virtual, and we want to have community participation in the meeting, but we want to be able to organize it in a way that ensures efficiency and and orderliness. Only to do that, only the commissioners will have audio and visual at the beginning, audio and video. And when we need to recognize someone from the audience, Lisa Gore, who I will now make a co-host. Just one second. Lisa will admit people into as a panelist, and so that you will have opportunity to be on the video and have audio. And so we can know who the participants are. If you could please just rename yourself if you're not named now. So I think they can do that. Is that right, Lisa? Okay, you should be able to rename yourself. And if you can, please do that. You can also use the chat and the Q&A functions as we're going through if you want to make comments or ask questions. And we may not get to all of those tonight. We're not necessarily monitoring that really carefully and comprehensively. But we will keep a record of those, and we'll try to answer them at a later point if we can't get to them tonight. The meeting is being recorded, and it will be posted on the ANC's YouTube site. And as I indicated, we're going to begin where we left off on the January 25th meeting, and we'll go through and address each of the recommendations in order in the working groups. Last time we ended in the community working group recommendation, and I think we talked about recommendation 6, but we've not yet voted on it. So we'll first start right there, and then we'll go to the housing group and the education and mental health group following that. And for each of the recommendations, we'll first entertain a motion to adopt the working group's recommendation. And if there's a second, the commissioners will discuss the recommendation, and there may be direct questions to the representatives of the working groups. And the representatives tonight are going to be Commissioner Gore on the community group, Commissioner Chang on the housing group, and Michael Gibbons on the education mental health working group. At any time, commissioners can propose an amendment to the motion to change the recommendation. And those amendments will be discussed as well. And after the commissioners' discussion and before we vote on recommendation, we'll take time for comments and questions from the community. We will generally limit those comments to about 3 minutes each, just in terms of trying to get everyone an opportunity to speak, and so that we can finish at some point tonight. Please be respectful of other people's opinions. This is an opportunity for a civil discussion, so please be respectful. Finally, we will vote on the original amendment to adopt the recommendation or any of the amendments that were proposed on the recommendation. And after we voted on all of the recommendations from the working groups, the commission may combine the adopted recommendations into one or more resolutions. We'll get through as many of the recommendations as we can tonight, but we're not going to go on interminably. We're going to end at 9 o'clock as we did at our January 25th meeting. And we will reschedule then for a later regular or special meeting. And finally, I reviewed the background on the task force at our January 25th meeting, and you can see that on the ANC's YouTube page, and it begins at about minute 23, if you want to look for that. Now, I neglected at the beginning to introduce all of the commissioners. I am Randy Speck. I'm chair of the commission. I represent ANC 3G03, which is basically the area between Nebraska and Utah and Broad Branch. And we'll introduce the other commissioners now. Commissioner Chang, Connie.
Hello, good evening. My name is Connie Chang. I'm the commissioner for 3G or 34G05, which is the area that's east on Connecticut, starting on Legation, and it hooks around Chevy Chase Circle on Western, and it comes down Broad Branch Road. But then there's a little part that is like a little rectangle from Chevy Chase Parkway and Nevada Avenue down to Jocelyn.
Peter?
I'm Peter Goslin, a new commissioner for District 6, which runs from the Western Avenue border with Maryland to the Chevy Chase Circle and down to Military Road from the west side of Connecticut all the way back to 41st with a peninsula to the east. I have perhaps the most urban district in this ANC with something like 25 or 30% of people living in apartments or multifamily units.
Lisa.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Gore, and I'm the commissioner for 34G01, which serves Hawthorne and portions of Barnaby Woods. So my territory is basically from Oregon to Western, down past Pinehurst Circle to Upland, portions of Tennyson over to Aberfoyle, and back down beach, connecting to Oregon. So that area right over there.
Chris?
I'm Chris Frombaluti, District number 7, which is the southernmost district in this ANC. It's on the south side of Military Road, over to Reno Road, to Nevada and Nebraska.
John?
I'm John Higgins. I'm the single member district for 02. Our borders are basically Oregon Avenue across to Utah, south to Nebraska, and north to about Beach and Wise Road.
And lastly, Michael.
So I'm Michael Zeldin. I represent 3G04. I should say, I guess I've got all the territory that hasn't been identified by the others. But principally, it goes from Tennyson to Morrison to Broad Branch to Utah, and the biggest entity in the district is the Lafayette Elementary School.
Okay, we have a quorum tonight, so we can conduct business. The only item on the agenda is the discussion of the recommendations on the task force. We should adopt the agenda before we proceed. Any modifications or changes anyone wants to make? Okay, all those in favor of adopting the agenda, raise your hand. 7-0. Okay. There was one announcement, I think, Lisa, you were going to make about the committee.
Yes.
Do you want to make it now or at the end?
I can do it at the end.
Okay, all right. We'll just wait till the end to make that announcement. Okay, we'll pick up then where we left off on the 25th. Lisa, you want to start with the recommendation from the community group, recommendation 6, I think.
Yes. Randy, just a procedural question. Do we need a motion to take it off the table because we tabled it?
Yes, I'll move to take it off the table and to consider it now.
Okay.
Second.
The second, all those in favor? 7-0. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we left off with recommendation number 6, which was regarding the creating community center space for events and activities. And where we left off was there were several different suggestions for the wording of the motion. The amended motion that I recommended currently still stands on the table. One of the things I did want to clarify, and I do have a member of the community group here tonight that could also offer some clarity on this recommendation. This community center space is not a dedicated space exclusively for the use of racial awareness, racial justice, equity. It's themed in that aspect, and we've considered different ways that we could, I guess, honor or dedicate a space to that core value, but I don't want the commissioners to think that it's exclusively for the use of that purpose. It's a space that would be open to everyone in the community, but it would be a space that is modeled after those values. So whether the space is dedicated to someone or there's artwork in that particular area, I just think from the last discussion, we maybe have gotten hung up on the word space. And I really want us to understand that we're not talking about a dedicated room just for the exclusive use of events, activities, you know, that are geared towards that purpose. But we are talking about a space, whether that's a room. One of the examples I want to share at the committee is something I believe one of the ANCs, maybe 4A or 4C did, and maybe within that community, I don't want to connect it with the ANC, within Tacoma community, they had artwork that reflected the diversity within the community. So that's kind of an example of the use of space. It's not necessarily a room, but it was a community artist that came in and dedicated murals on some of their picnic table areas where the community gathers. I believe it was a park, but that's kind of an example of something that we could think about doing in terms of how do we use space within the community center to you know, honor these core values and dedicate to racial equity and inclusion. So to kind of make the community center reflective of everyone that's in the community, we have an opportunity to do that.
Lisa, do you have a suggestion for a change in the language of the recommendation?
I really, you know, I thought about that. I really like the language that I've already amended it to.
Could you then just read that so we all have it in mind?
So it basically says, the commission tasked the Standing Committee on Racial and Social Equity to study the recommendation to. So let me just talk about that part. We're asking that this recommendation be passed to the Standing Committee for study. And then after that, create community center space for events and activities. And then inserting after that, supporting racial equity inclusion and develop an implementation plan for further commission consideration in collaboration with the small area plan team. And that's the full reading of the amended language. And we put in collaboration with the small area plan team because we know that that team is going to be working and looking at how we use space within the community at large, including the community center. So we're trying to connect our recommendations to a longer vision of what we're going to have in the community. Peter, you're on mute.
Just so I understand, this is seconded and it's on the floor.
Yes.
Okay. Can we move the question?
Randy?
Yes, sure.
Oh, Michael is saying. You're on mute, Michael.
He said he knows. If I read his lips right.
Okay, all right.
So so the recommendation is, as written in the task force report, says create community center space for events and activities, right? That's the recommendation. And now, Lisa, could you just say it just one time through without explanation?
Yeah. Okay. So the commission tasked the standing committee. Actually, let me read. The commission tasked the Standing Committee on Racial and Social Equity to study the recommendation to create community center space for events and activities supporting racial equity and inclusion, and develop an implementation plan for further commission consideration in collaboration with the small area plan.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I think we have to take a vote now. Is that correct? Okay, all those in favor? 7-0. Thank you. Libby has raised her hand. Does she have something to say on this topic? I guess we were supposed to have a discussion from the
Yeah.
attendees before. I'm sorry, we just blew through that. Why don't we take the comments from those who have raised their hand?
Did not go through. There she is.
Mhm.
Libby, you're a panelist now.
You're muted. There you go.
Hi, good evening. I'm just happy to see that, the group is understanding the intent, which is exactly in line with the notion of community building. It's all about sharing and elevating the importance of the mission of originally the task force, which was to create awareness and, inform and engage the community around the importance of creating diversity and equity in our neighborhood. So it seems like everybody is on board. So I'm very happy to see that. And I was raising my hand literally at the same time that you all were voting. So sorry. Good point.
I'm sorry we didn't.
I'm happy to provide more input if needed.
Okay, thank you, Libby.
Thank you, Libby.
Thanks, Libby.
Andrea Rosen raised her hand, but then I think she's lowered it. Andrea, did you have, if you want to say something, you can raise your hand again. Okay, I don't see any more raised hands now. Okay, we'll move on to the next recommendation, Lisa.
Okay. The next recommendation is recommendation number 7. So basically to facilitate ongoing work regarding Newlands Fountain and naming issues. So at this point, I move the adoption of community working group recommendation number 7, facilitate ongoing work regarding Newlands Fountain and naming issues.
Is there a second? Peter seconds. Okay, any discussion? John?
My point here is that whenever these things are done, whether it's Newlands or Wilson or anything else, that the process should include an appropriate public explanation or education measures, so that the public understands why that is being done. And we could very easily do that, I think, by just inserting after issues, including appropriate public education measures. I'd be happy with that. So I guess I offer that as a friendly amendment. Is that the deal?
Yeah. I'll accept that. And one of the things that we did discuss in here, and I know there's already some ongoing effort in the renaming of or the issue with the Newland Fountain, but we also talked about the community engagement piece in this, John, just to let you know, including possible work in terms of our other recommendation in terms of surveying of the community. So this piece also has a lot of community engagement wrapped into it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Randy?
Yeah, there is some work being undertaken now to do part of that education process, and specifically with the fountain in the circle. And we've been working with the National Park Service on getting wayside exhibits that will be placed there to explain the history of the fountain and the naming and all of that. And it's going to be then linked to a website that will have a lot more information. And so those kinds of things, I think, are the National Park Service likes to do that to preserve the history. And they've already initiated that process, and working with the historic Chevy Chase DC and Chevy Chase Historical Society, both of those organizations, to try to get the text that would go on those wayside exhibits. So that's already in process.
Any other questions?
Do you want to take comments from the,
If there are any, if anyone wants to speak on this issue, if you please raise your hand. Use the raise hand function on Zoom. Don't see anyone. Okay, Lisa, you want to take a vote?
All those in favor? Okay, so no
7-0.
noes, no abstentions. Thank you. And the final, we're getting through. The final recommendation for community is to support district programs and policies. So at this point, I'm going to move the adoption of community working group recommendation number 8, support district programs and policies. And this recommendation is pretty much just what it says. It would be a aspect of the group, which would now be the permanent standing committee, to look at different policies and programs throughout our community and the district in a broader sense, to look for those racial equity issues, and now with the permanent standing committee, the social equity issues. We talked about, and one of the things that if you have, I don't know if you all had the attachment, but one of the things we talked about is supporting the Chevy Chase application in order to diversify businesses along the Connecticut Avenue corridor. So looking at things from an equity perspective, you know, when we're working with our small area plan, you know, the comp plan and different things that are going on, are we being as inclusive as we can to attract not only a diverse community, but also diverse businesses within our community? We talked about different issues on emergency police and justice reform measures that are already going on within the city, and also supporting things like Mayor Bowser's equity inclusion priority and RFPs. So, and I think maybe some of the community doesn't know that also underneath the council, it was just established an office of equity that sits underneath the council. So this would be a perfect recommendation to work hand in hand with that division, which I believe is part of the executive office. Randy, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it sits underneath the council.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what this recommendation tries to get to the heart of. Peter, do you have any questions?
yeah, I do. Look, we've got bigger fish to fry here tonight, but we've spent a lot of time over the last 3 weeks talking about language, and I do appreciate that we've had a give and take, and there's been a real effort to reach some consensus. As this now states, it's sort of an empty set. We have the Standing Committee on Racial and Social Equity. That's their job, and we voted on that last week. What more are we doing with the words support district programs and policies than saying that they're going to come to us with many of the things that are in the task force report, I suspect, but that's what we expect of them. That's what we said they were supposed to do. How's this advance the case any?
Well, I think it sets the framework for one of the things that they are going to do, and with the blessing of the commission. So I think this is one of the most important ones, because this one probably has the most, most way to have a permanent impact on the district and the community. So I do think this one really establishes a real important framework of what the permanent committee would be doing, which would be, looking at issues, programs, policies, practices within our community and the district, and lending support to that through the equity lens. Michael, you're on mute.
No, I'm not.
Are you lip reading?
So would, as a statement, support district programs and policies. I was wondering whether, for the sake of clarity to the uninitiated reader, we might want it to read a little bit more fully to something along the lines of support district programs and policies to achieve racial justice, inclusion, and equity within our community, or something that says we're supporting district programs and policies related to the work of the task force, or related to the work on the standing committee, just so we know what the programs and what programs and policies we are broadly supporting.
Okay.
Yeah, I
It's not-
agree with Michael.
Be careful about doing that, Connie. It
I
can
know.
be damaging to your reputation long term.
Let's see. Also, Michael Gibbons has sent us something, so we should just read it quietly ourselves.
Okay. Let me make sure we got our commissioners covered first. Any more? And Michael, this just to go with your suggestion. So can you give me your last wording?
So just scribbled here on a piece of paper, it said, support district programs / policies to achieve racial justice, inclusion, and equity within our community, or within the District of Columbia, however, within whatever. And maybe it's the District of Columbia, but maybe it's our community. I don't know which is the better way to describe it.
I'd suggest our community. I think that's better than the broader district in this instance.
Okay. And if anyone has a better way of giving the string, my string is racial justice, inclusion, and equity, because those are the words I was hearing Lisa saying. If it should be racial and social justice, inclusion, diversity, equity, so whatever is the descriptors that it is that we are supporting.
I would like to stick with the equity, because looking at equity is systemic in nature, and it's looking at the systemic causes of inequity. So I would agree, and to keep it similar to the other language that we've used racial and social equity.
Okay, that's fine, within our community. So racial and social support district programs and policies to support racial and social equity within our community. That would be my friendly amendment. Is that?
Wait, to achieve or to support, Michael?
Well, hers is.
What's your verb?
The recommendation starts with support district programs, and then I say to achieve. Because the objective is the achievement of racial and social equity. So we're going to support the achievement of those things. That's how, in my mind, I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds
just
good.
for clarification purposes, when we say community, are we restricting that to Chevy Chase, or does that include supporting broader district, issues? So there's a couple things that is, we've talked about on a broader district level. Are we narrowing it to strictly Chevy Chase?
Well, this is why I suggested, whether it should be community or city. When I use the word community, I didn't mean it to include just the four corners of our ANC. I mean, only, sort of the community in which we live, the fellowship of man, or whatever it is. So, but if community seems as if it would be a term that is restrictive, then I would change it to city, or some other word that's.
I'm fine with leaving it as community, as long as everyone is under the understanding that that encompasses the broader community of the District of Columbia.
Yeah, that was my intention. I just But it was a good point to ask whether it is a restricting word or an expansive word. And I intended it as an expansive word.
Okay. Connie?
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to point out in the report, the goal and the objective says Chevy Chase community. So it's fine for our commission to use the word more broadly. I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, and I know that's how we meant it in the report, as broadly.
But since we're not qualifying it, Connie, as Chevy Chase community and just describing it as community, then I think it gives it a
Yeah.
broader meaning.
Yes, yes.
Any other comments from the commissioners? Any community comments? And I know we have two in the chat. I read Michael's comment, the standing committee scope of work charter would be partially to gather up all working group recommendations within that mandate. And Libby likes the word achieve. Okay, Randy.
Okay, shall we take a vote? I'm not sure there was a second. Was there a second?
Yeah, Peter.
Peter second? Okay. All those in favor? Michael? 7-0. Okay.
So just to conclude, community, I want to thank the commissioners. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This was, I didn't think it would take us this long to get through community, but thanks for all the questions. I know there is a lot of work across the aisle, as they so say. Couldn't thank you guys for more, for really helping us out and getting these recommendations passed.
Okay, Connie, you want to move on to housing then?
Yes, I will. Okay, let me just get my notes ready. I have to move things out of here. Okay.
At a point of personal privilege, I guess, I don't know.
Okay.
After Connie speaks, I'd like to make a couple of remarks and just to set the stage for this conversation. Is that
Okay.
acceptable to people?
I'm fine with that. I was just going to start by going over a little bit of what the work group did to set the stage for the recommendations to come. And I was going to say that, we chose to volunteer. We kind of, in June, chose to volunteer for the big task force on racism itself. And then we kind of all went into our own, which work group will we spend most of our time. And so we have 7 members of the housing work group. And they were myself, Randy Speck, Ron Eichner, Libby Martin, Judith Mays, Sarah Reams, Cal Simone, were the 7 of us. And we had some invited guests when we had questions and we needed some help. But we spent a lot of time, from basically the most of the summer through the fall to produce a report that the previous commission asked us to produce. And that took a lot of work. And it was a combined and joint effort. And we went through kind of each of us doing some parts of it and then collating the whole. But the goal really for the work group was to try to understand our own history. And October 26th, we presented that. And in the town hall, November 16th, we presented it again. And those reports are on the ANC website. And I do encourage people to read it again, even though we're going through some of the recommendations now. They are available. And the recommendations itself, the 7 that we will discuss, we'll start discussing tonight, is in tables 1 on page 5 of the housing report, which is, I think, a November 13th draft, is final draft. I want to say that we were motivated in terms of looking at housing to see how we can expand housing options, housing choice. We were motivated by our own history, where we have had exclusionary practices here. Even my own house, when I purchased it in 1998, I was so shocked to know that on the deed of my house, I could never have purchased my home, and neither could my husband. And that I kind of left in the back of my mind. And now, all these years later, we're addressing these kinds of issues, and policy definitely affects the way a neighborhood looks. And I think the housing committee was trying to do that. So again, I would like to then repeat that the recommendations are recommendations. Nothing is set in stone. You know, we started doing the work, we did a lot of reading, and then we put our thoughts together, and then we proposed those thoughts to the previous commission. We're going to do the same thing now. We're looking at it again, and it's most of it is to study, most of it is to learn. And it is not to make anyone feel like a small group of us who volunteered is imposing anything on anyone. I want to just make that very clear. I think that there's been some concern about that. That is not the case, but we do have opportunities here to create a vision for certainly our Connecticut Avenue corridor, because there's money to modernize the library, to modernize the community center, to do more work there. And it comes at a good time. And then there's other opportunities for us to take advantage of. And I think we should think of it in that way. So before I begin with recommendation 1, and for each of them, I will just give a little bit of a kind of intro. Before I do that, I'll give the floor to Peter for him to make the remarks that he'd like to make.
Okay, I wanted to say, to explain to the people attending that the ability of our commission to be accorded great weight because of the legal structure of ANCs is if we speak together. That's what we're trying to do. Last week when we started this process, I voiced the hope that we would approach this in the spirit of the president who's just taken office and not the one shown the door. And ultimately, although it's been a long process, I think we're almost there. I think that some of the concerns that I have and other commissioners have been heard by people who worked hard on this task force report. And I think we're so much almost there that I'd propose as a procedure that we allot 5 minutes for each of recommendation 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6, and then go on to 5 and maybe a little bit on 7. But I think that as we've demonstrated with community, you know, if we don't have any sort of time target, we can really go on. Anyways, that is a procedural suggestion I make. I don't know how it is treated in a parliamentary fashion, and I don't know whether that accords with your interest, Connie.
Well, the only thing I'm going to say is that it will take me a little time to introduce my motion. So I'd like to introduce my motion, and then really if everyone is in agreement, if there's nothing there between us, then we open it to the attendees and let them speak. I think it's important. I don't want anyone to feel like they haven't been heard. And certainly most of the recommendations that we put together offers more opportunity for more voices. You know, nothing that gets done can get done in a day. And we know that. And in our report, we also say it's any effort to build affordable housing, to address racial equity. These things are multi-year efforts, and it's just the beginning. And so no one should feel like they were left out. No one should feel like their voices are not heard. So I will try my best, Peter, to go over, you know, each motion, and then let's open the floor and not constrain anyone, you know, feeling that there's a deadline. If we can get to 9 o'clock and we finish, hooray. And then Michael Gibbons will have to come back again for the next meeting for education and mental health. And I'm sorry, Michael, but I'm going to move forward if no one objects. Okay. All right. So the first recommendation of the housing work group is written as such: build significant dedicated affordable housing and workforce housing above the Chevy Chase Community Center and the Chevy Chase Library. The group, you know, felt that this kind of modernized building, when when it goes through, which is, I think the budget is for 2024, so it's still a ways off, right? Randy, correct me if I'm wrong, but the money is there, but the work hasn't been done yet. And they have to find, they have to find the company that's going to do it. It's going to take some time, the builder and so forth. And we have to get very involved. But let's say it is modernized. You really see it. The work group saw it as a town center and a way to kind of bring people who are coming north to south as a Chevy Chase gateway. It's the presentation of sort of our community. And the ANC last year proposed developing significant affordable housing on this new combined campus. The strategy of co-locating mixed income housing and public services has ample precedence in other cities. We did look at that in the work group. The Office of Planning's upcoming small area plan, which both Peter and I sit on, and we can certainly talk about on Monday, we can introduce what their plans are, is expected to flesh out this proposal to provide a minimum of 50% income restricted affordable housing, family size units, and opportunities for residents ownership. We also said in the work group in this report, the district government, nonprofit entities, private investment, and perhaps even the community could contribute to financing for this project. The idea there was to make sure that we are getting what we hope for. And this development would provide accessible choices for district residents who have been overtly sort of excluded from living in this neighborhood because it's extremely expensive. Okay, and we even broadened it out to say, folks like me with kids in college and afterwards they may want to come back and it's very difficult for them to come back. So with that introduction, Lisa, would you like to add something before I make my motion?
Oh, I'm sorry, Connie. It was just procedural. I thought you had made the motions. Go on.
Not yet. I
Okay.
am making my motion now. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That was just my preamble to keep get everyone
sorry.
on the same page. I feel like if I just go to the thing. Okay, so I move that the commission adopt housing work group recommendation 1, build significant dedicated affordable housing and workforce housing above the Chevy Chase Community Center and the Chevy Chase Library. And in our work group, we include 5 key actions that's found in table 1 on page 5 of the November 13th, 2020 final draft report with amended language to key actions 1, 2, and 5. I'm going to go over that now. Okay. So for key action 1, originally it says, yes, Lisa.
I second your motion.
Oh, thank you so. Oh, before I say all the key actions, I'm going to amend. You're going to second my motion. Okay. I was going to finish. I'm going to finish all of it, and then we can have a second. Okay.
Yeah,
sorry.
I think the entire thing is with the actions is the motion. That's
Okay.
the motion.
Okay, that is the motion. Any second, Lisa. Okay.
Go on.
I'm going to go on.
Discussion.
No, well, okay. So I have amendments to key actions.
Yeah, can I just a point of clarification, Rand?
Yes.
Isn't the motion, isn't recommendation 1 the whole schmear?
The
Yes.
whole thing.
Yes.
So I think we want to do.
We want to wait until
Yes.
the whole thing is done with all of the action items and then
Yes,
have a
please.
second to that.
Right.
I think that's
Please.
the proper way.
Okay, so I'm going to rewind. I'm going to say, you heard the recommendation, but there are these 5 key actions. That's critical. Okay, that's very critical. And key action 1 is advise the Office of Planning to include mixed income housing with at least 50% dedicated affordable housing as part of the small area plan, as amended by striking the language at least and inserting a goal of, and adding the language and considering other requirements after the word plan. So it reads this way now. Key action 1 as amended. Okay. Advise the Office of Planning to include mixed income housing with a goal of 50% dedicated affordable housing as part of the small area plan and considering other requirements. Key action 2. include a mix of affordable and workforce housing for families, including ownership by residents, as amended by adding the language to the extent applicable after the word including, to read. Include a mix of affordable and workforce housing for families, including, to the extent practicable, ownership by residents. Key action 3 remains, there's no amendment here. It reads, advise the district to work with a coalition of nonprofit and for-profit developers and the community. Key action 4, there's no change. It reads, work with the deputy mayor for planning and economic development to prepare a financing plan that may include participation by community groups, businesses, and foundations. And then key action 5, this I'm amending. So the original language is create an ANC task force to coordinate programmatic requirements and architectural design, as amended by striking the language create an ANC task force and inserting establish a mechanism for the ANC. Okay, so it reads now, establish a mechanism for the ANC to coordinate programmatic requirements and architectural design. So that is my motion on the table, okay, with the original recommendation and amended language to key action 1, 2, and 5.
Now, do you want a second, Lisa?
I second.
We'll second it.
Okay, any discussion by commissioners? Michael?
So I've got a couple of little things. The first is that throughout the task force on racism working group recommendations, principally, except for perhaps creating a web page or something that's sort of simple, we use words like encourage and study and the like, whereas in this one, our recommendation is to build, which is, you know, an affirmative action that we are, I don't know, recommendation. I'm not sure who we're exactly making a recommendation to, because I thought all of this stuff was going into the work of the new committee. Where is this one going to?
This work remains with the commission. It's
And
not
so-
going to the standing committee for racial and social equity. It remains with us. And key action 1, we say advise the Office of Planning. And really we're seeing this as part of I see it as part of the small area plan effort for us to insert ourselves, and also if we need to have meetings and so forth. But Randy, I think, wanted to say something,
Well,
wanted
so
to jump
I would-
in.
But let me just try to finish my thought, because
Sure, go ahead.
and I'm not opposing this. I'm just talking about language principally, because it seems as if, firstly, instead of advising the office, in our position, we're encouraging them to do this. I don't know how we advise versus what we encourage, but I'm not sure. I'm still not sure exactly about starting it with recommendation is to build, or we are recommending or encouraging the building of, it seems to me that we're encouraging the building of affordable housing and workforce housing above the Chevy Chase Community Center and library. So that's sort of what I was thinking that we were doing, was encouraging the development or the development of dedicated housing. And then I was wondering about the word advise versus the word encourage. And then in key action 2, I would, you write include a mix of affordable and workforce housing for families, including, comma, to the extent, and I would qualify that and say to the maximum extent practicable, because ownership is really a critical component of what I think we are encouraging the city to do, or the Office of Planning to do. And then the question I had on key action 5 was establish a mechanism for the ANC to coordinate programmatic requirements. I was just wondering whether, do we want to say with whom we would be coordinating? So in sum, I was wondering about using the word encourage instead of advise, adding the word maximum to qualify to the extent practical. Wondering in key action 5 whether we should indicate with whom we are coordinating. And then my overarching comment is: are we building? Our recommendation is to build, or are we encouraging whomever is the decision-making authority that they build or include affordable? We encourage whomever it is that to include dedicated affordable housing, workforce housing above Chevy Chase Center and Chevy Chase Library. That's sort of what I was wondering about. So again, it's not the substance of this by any means, it's just the manner in which it's
Clarification.
described.
Mhm.
Now I'm
Who
done.
was, thank you, Michael. Who was next, Randy? I was looking down, taking notes. Was it Lisa?
Lisa, I
Okay,
think, yes.
Lisa, you're next.
My first question I want to ask is on key action number 1. Can you give me a little insight into how the committee came up with the 50% number? How'd you develop that number as opposed to 15%?
I believe that in inclusionary zoning, there's a lower percentage, and we wanted to raise it to be more. Is that right, Randy?
It's a little broader than that. I think for government-owned property, the current standard is that it would be 50%. I think that's the standard.
For public housing.
Yeah. As I think Ron Eichner is responding in the chat, that's the standard essentially. If it's government-owned property. Now, if it's not government-owned property, it's less. But that's why we said we included 50%, at least 50%.
Yeah.
Is there any benchmarks in the district? What is the with other projects? Do you know if there's any benchmarks that meet that 50% or comes close to it? Are we asking for something that's unattainable, or is 50% attainable?
It should be. I mean, I think it will be attainable. We're saying now that it's a goal. So it's not, if we don't meet it, it's not the end of the world, I guess. But I think it is attainable. That, like I said, that's the standard that the district has imposed on its property. When when housing is being built on its property, it's supposed to be 50% affordable.
There's a question in the chat that was kind of related to this, where they said, when you say 50%, do you mean 50% of the units will be considered affordable?
It's usually, I think, the square footage. It's based on square footage. 50% of the square footage would be affordable.
Okay, so I think Peter is next. Peter?
So this is what, with regard to the 50%, if we're going to go down this path, I mean, this is going to be a multi-use building if it gets built. And so is it 50% of the square footage of the whole structure, or
housing, of the housing
Structure.
of the housing portion?
Yeah.
Okay. With regard to Michael's comment, I mean, we can say, it seems to me that with regard to the top line recommendation. If there is anything we can speak to definitively, it's land use of public property in this community.
Right.
If we want to say, tell the city to build with, that's fine. But I mean, I don't think we need to mumble about encouraging in this particular zone of in our community and public property. Well, so let me just finish and you can come back. And so, and I don't think there's much, I don't know what's at stake in advise versus encourage. And then, and with regard to the coordinate programmatic requirements, I think we have to be realistic about the fact that this is a long lead time thing. We don't know exactly what the programmatic requirements are. If it turns out, for example, we're not able to attract any affordable housing partners, for-profit or nonprofit developers to work with us and the city to do this, well, then that's one story. And then there are very different programmatic developments and a different cast of actors if we do attract, So, I mean, I think, at that stage, being a little vague is just being realistic that we don't know how quite this is going to go. But surely telling the city or committing ourselves to build with the city's help and with the help of outsiders, developers, foundations, etc., seems to me well within our purview. What do you think?
I didn't make noise earlier that I was gonna, John actually said something that you heard as my statement. John was talking to somebody in the room, I think, but if we think that we have the authority to use the word build, that we can say because build is a command, that we have the ANC has the power to order somebody to do something, then fine, leave the word build in. I just didn't think we had that capacity. That's why I was trying to say that we strongly encourage, or something that is what the ANCs do, since we're an advisory commission. But if I'm wrong about that, then this is not a matter of principle for me. This is, as I say, semantic more than it is substantive.
You're muted, Connie.
Randy?
Yeah, I mean, what we do is advise. We are advisory neighborhood commissioners. And so I think it is appropriate to say we advise the district to build significant dedicated affordable housing, or we advise the Office of Planning, because that's the very purpose of advisory neighborhood commissions, is to advise. And so that's our advice. Now, with regard to the comment you made about action item 5, I'm not sure we can specify the entire universe of people who we're going to coordinate the programmatic requirements and architectural design with, because it's certainly going to include at least the library and the Department of Parks and Recreation, but it's going to include others as well, I suspect. It's going to be a host of characters that will have to be coordinated there.
So would you say, Randy, that we could, and again, this is more semantic than it is things, so could we say, I always think you can't leave the word coordinate without saying with whom you're coordinating. So we could say coordinate with all relevant stakeholders.
That's fine.
So if you think advise the Office of Planning is better than encourage, I'm happy to go with advise. It's fine.
Typically in resolutions, in our earlier resolutions, we have advise the mayor, advise the council.
Okay.
That's the specific language that we've used.
The action one advise, but the recommendation itself just says build. Most of the recommendations themselves start with the verb, and then the key action kind of constrains it a little bit. I believe, Randy, do you have any more to say before I turn to Chris? Okay, Chris.
So Randy, so I'm sorry, Randy, what was your, I didn't write it down. What was the manner in which you would construct the sentence, the first sentence of the recommendation number 1?
Advise the district to build significant.
Okay. And that, I'm fine with that too. Sorry.
So I want to say again that all of the recommendations start with the verb, and then the key actions begin with the actor, who we're advising, who we're encouraging. So are we saying that we want to change every one of these recommendations to begin with that? What you're saying, Michael?
No, I'm just looking at them. Two of them, numbers 2 and 4 start with encourage.
Okay.
Which is why I was using the word encourage again to be consistent within the document. That's why I picked up that word. And that's why Randy changing the word encourage to advise is saying number 1, which would then be consistent with 2, and with number 4 would be to advise the building of or something. That's all I was saying, Connie. That's where I was trying to make it consistent. You're on mute, I think, or I can't hear you at least.
You're on
Can you
mute.
hear me?
We can't hear you. We can't hear you, Connie. Chris, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, we didn't invent this housing thing that's being proposed for the community center library. It's in the proposed long-range plan by the Office of Planning. It's a reserved parcel. They specifically mention housing. So this is not something that we're imposing on anybody. And secondly, I wish we could spend a little less time on every single word in these resolutions. We'll be here till midnight again. It's not that important. It really isn't. This is the ANC. This is not Congress.
I disagree. I think words matter, Chris.
Well, I know you guys are all reporters, so no matter
Not
that much to me.
everybody.
I'm just putting in my 2 cents.
No, but I'm saying the document survives beyond us. It's a historical document, and it should reflect accurately what the consensus of the community is. I don't think they're going to be calling you in your retirement home in Florida to ask you what these things meant.
No one's going to look at these. In 2 weeks, no one will look at this thing again.
Well, I'm not that cynical.
Yeah.
We should also recognize too that this is not a new recommendation by the ANC either, because we included it in our recommendations with regard to the comp plan. We have testified before the council to this effect. I mean, all of this is very much in the kind of recommendations the commission has made before. All aspects of this really, of recommendation 1.
And how did we describe it in all those other documents?
We didn't describe it in this much detail. It was much less.
But were we advising them to do things?
Yes.
Okay, that's all. That's my only small point.
Peter has his hand up.
I raised this reluctantly, but I do think it's a legitimate issue somewhere along the way in this discussion, which is that as a newcomer to this commission, I must say I find the word affordable fungible, right? I mean, it seems to go from like 30% of average minimum median income to 120% of average median income. And no, Connie needs to hear this. Are you not hearing this?
She can hear, she just can't talk.
Oh,
She's working on her audio.
I don't know if there's any way to cope with that in this recommendation or anywhere in this, it does seem to me that being sure that some of this housing is available at the 30% of average median income is important. I don't want us to get into a big debate about this, but it is, I mean, I must say the difference in those two income levels is really huge in this city.
Connie, we're still not able to hear you.
I mean, you should be able to hear me now.
Okay, now we can hear you. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
something went wrong with my AirPods. I'm so sorry. So in the report, we do say that we're not narrowing ourselves just to affordable, but also attainable. And then on page 17, we do give a range of what that area median income is that we're looking at. And in the research that we did, having just primarily low income doesn't have great results. And so mixed income would be better for a building like this. And that is why there is a range. And it is true that it's expensive to live here. And so that area median income will be higher than elsewhere. Peter, would you like to continue?
Just in that regard, I do want, I mean, the only reason I raised this, I know it was in the task force report. But my understanding of what we're doing here is we're passing resolutions that are sort of what we are endorsing, so that while we want to mine the task force report for information and the wisdom of that you gained from the work you've done, the language does not, that we're passing doesn't refer back to and incorporate the language of the task force report. So this issue of kind of what affordable is sort of not dealt with. Again, I'm happy to leave it unclear, but I just pointed out that there's a huge range there.
Did someone else?
Connie?
Randy?
Yeah, I just want to chime in that I mean, we had a lot of discussion about this. I don't think it's possible at this point to define what every level of affordability should be. It's going to depend on the economics of the building. It's going to depend on lots and lots of factors. And we said we want to have ownership. We want to have family units. All of those kinds of things are desirable, and they should be included to the extent possible. But all of that's going to have to be worked out at a later point, and it's simply not possible at this point to say.
Fair enough. So can we move the question? Or no, we can take comments from.
We can take comments now. We've
Wait,
got
one more.
3 people.
John has-
Oh, John.
Just for clarification on the initial motion at the top, are we now going to say after number 1, advise the district to build? Are we going to, so we put that in the advisory context?
Connie, did you accept that amendment?
I will accept that friendly amendment. So, and I like John's wording, advise the district to.
Are we ready for community?
And then could I ask another clarifying question? Are we, Michael added or wanted amended language to,
Key action 5.
was it to 5? Yes, to, not to 5, to number 2, to the extent practicable. He wants to add to the maximum extent practicable, and I'm fine with that amendment if we want to discuss that in any way.
And on key action 5, it was suggested with relevant stakeholders.
Yeah, all relevant.
All relevant stakeholders, I am also okay with that. I think it's more precise language. So if no one else, no other commissioners have anything else to add, then let's open it up to the people who've raised their hands and are desperately wanting to join us for this conversation.
Okay, we're going to limit it to 3 minutes.
So we're going to start with Janine McKay. I'm getting ready to promote you. Then Stephen Jerome, then Diane Thompson, then Jamie Butler. That'll be the order for right now.
You escalating Stephen Jerome?
Janine, you're promoted to panelist. You can ask your comments. You're on mute.
Mute.
Pardon me. Okay, you don't really want to see me, do you?
We would love to see you.
Yes, yes. I cannot get it to, it's very finicky. Okay,
We see you.
all right. Just a comment on the matter of pricing of the houses. The the area out, I'm sorry, I can't remember it. It's on East Capitol by the old RFK Stadium. Wynn has asked for 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3, you know, and just left it at that. So I think we have to do something to make it very clear that we expect low income housing. We don't want to do anything that would anyway lead them off the hook. That's just my comment.
And just so I understand, ma'am,
Uh-huh.
1/3, 1/3, and 1/3 is 1/3, 30%, 1/3, some other
30.
percent, and
No, one would be market rate.
yeah,
Then the other one would be what they would call kind of the median level in the city, you know, something, and then low income. And they've got the numbers. I just don't. But it, you know, we're talking about teachers, fire, you know,
I understand.
that kind of thing.
Right.
People who are really going to be just fine in this kind of housing situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKay.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm getting ready to promote Stephen Jerome. Stand by.
Asking to speak, just listening, but maybe he wants to say something now.
I think he's did not want to be
Yeah.
speaking.
Stephen, you're on mute.
I'm gonna, can you unmute yourself? I just want to be clear, you don't want to speak? Okay, I'm returning him back. Promoting Diane Thompson. Diane, you can speak now. Diane, are you there?
She's
You're on mute.
Diane, you're on mute.
Okay, now you're not on mute. You can speak.
Diane?
We're not hearing her. Diane, I'm gonna come back to you. You might need to check your audio setting. Promoting Jamie Butler. Jamie, you can speak. You're on mute.
Great, I'm off now.
Yes, thank you.
Sure, thanks for the opportunity to speak to you. I've lived in the neighborhood for 36 years, in Washington, D.C. for 50. And I'm speaking not just as a long-term resident of Chevy Chase, but also as a member of the Washington Interfaith Network and WIN's Ward 3 Congregation's Affordable Housing Work Group, which we have formed this past year and are comprised of synagogues and church groups in Ward 3, supporting Washington Interfaith Network and this housing task force. And the proposals, the recommendations that you've just discussed here. I'm also a member of the Citizens Advisory Group that's working with the Office of Planning on the small area plan. I just want to reinforce what we've heard, and that is the past injustices that have been committed against Blacks right in our community. not just discrimination by covenants, financing and zoning, but also outright displacement on Broad Branch and Fort Rito. Some of that is new to me, and I imagine there are still many people living in Chevy Chase that have no idea what's happened here. Covenants, many of us know because we see it on our deeds. And while we're not responsible for what happened in the past, we have some responsibility now to address those past injustices. And increasing our diversity will benefit all of us. I know change is hard, but if we embrace the principle of housing for all and of making Ward 3 more equitable and diverse, we can work through this as a community. And the challenges that are ahead of us, I mean, I'm just sure of it. And if we don't discuss this solely on the listserv, but rather find ways to come together, it has to be done virtually. But I strongly encourage us to do it that way. I don't think a listserv is a way to air our concerns, our grievances, or whatever is bothering us. Not all for-profit developers are out only to make money with no sense of civic responsibility. There are plenty of them out there with a proven record of developing affordable housing and doing it honestly. So maligning them is not going to get us anywhere. The ANC's housing report will not result in oversized buildings incompatible with the character of Chevy Chase, DC. That's a misunderstanding of the report. And we as a community have an opportunity now to guide the Office of Planning and ultimately the way we want new housing to be built here. But we have to work together. We have to collaborate rather than trying to stop it. That's not going to work anymore. It'll just delay it and cost more money. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk.
Thank you. Okay, and
Thank
we
you,
have
Jamie.
one more hand raised. Carol Spiegel, I'm getting ready to promote you. Carol, you can talk now. You're muted.
Hi. I am all for diversity in the neighborhood. I'm very happy to hear about it. I am concerned about overreach from developers, and I live right near Chevy Chase Circle and behind Magruder's, and I'm just worried about how much this could lead to developers being able to, you know, kind of go into the neighborhood part and off of Connecticut Avenue and change the character of Washington, you know, in this area right here. And just, you know, that's my concern.
Thank you, Carol. Did Connie, you or anyone from the group want to address any of the concerns that you've heard?
For this recommendation 1, we're just focused on Chevy Chase Library and the Chevy Chase Community Center. And I think Carol's concerns are really directed to recommendation 2, which we're going to talk about in a second.
Can we try to get Diane Thompson back? Did she disappear altogether? She sent me a note. She says she's trying. She's trying to get back. She sent a note in addition. Where was that?
Diane? Diane? Still can't hear.
Diane, we can't hear you. And unfortunately, let's see what I did with the note that you. No, I can't. I'm afraid I can't find it. I'm somehow or other in this gym.
I think we should
Move on.
move on.
Perhaps Diane, if she has more to say, she can write down what she has or even email us.
Yeah, Diane, if you can hear us, please put stuff in the chat.
Please. Thank you.
Or the Q&A.
in speaking up.
Okay, I move the question.
Is that something that needs seconding?
Chris.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion as it's been amended? 7-0, okay. I will note that it's taken us a little over 30 minutes to get through the first one. So we're not following your guidelines, Peter.
What's new?
Okay, all right.
I think, Peter, if you and I stop talking, they'll fly through this thing.
Hey, fella, I think I'm silent on this one.
Okay. Okay, so we are now on recommendation number 2. And this one, the original recommendation is encourage significant dedicated affordable housing and workforce housing in private development along the Chevy Chase Gateway through expanded inclusionary zoning and the small area plan. And I was just going to say that, recommendation 1 was on public land, recommendation 2 is private. And we, in the work group, felt that the Office of Planning Small Area Planning process provides a unique opportunity to shape future mixed-use, moderate density development along the Chevy Chase Gateway. And that the small area plans in general, their mission is to establish a community vision and a specific framework for future development. And they become part of the DC. I'm sorry, people are saying my voice is too soft. Man, this AirPods, I wish it would work. Okay, so the small area plan becomes part of DC's comprehensive plan, and any zoning or other development actions must be consistent with that plan. The work group itself felt that the current Safeway, although it's owned by multiple owners, Wells Fargo Bank, which actually have had a long history in that location, and the WMATA Bus Depot are potential sites for low density commercial, moderate density residential buildings. And inclusionary zoning is a tool already in place to require a proportion of new units to be set aside for lower income tenants or owners. And then we talked about more things that are in the key actions. So just as a preamble, I move that the commission adopt housing work group recommendation 2, encourage significant dedicated affordable housing and workforce housing in private development along the Chevy Chase Gateway, and that 4 actions, key actions, only one of which I am amending. So key action 1, I am amending, and that language is thus. Key action 1 says, advise the Office of Planning that the ANC supports enhancements to inclusionary zoning to upzoned parcels in the Chevy Chase Gateway to include at least 25% affordable housing, as amended by adding a goal of after include and adding considering other requirements as well after housing. So key action 1, which is found in table 1 on page 5 of the Housing Work Group report, will now read as amended. Advise the Office of Planning that the ANC supports enhancements to inclusionary zoning for upzoned parcels in the Chevy Chase Gateway to include a goal of at least 25% affordable housing, considering other requirements as well. Key action 2 remains as the original. It reads, advise the Office of Planning to hold a charrette as part of a small area plan to explore possibilities for development in the Chevy Chase Gateway. Key action 3 is the original. In coordination with Chevy Chase Main Street, the Office of Planning, local businesses, property owners, and the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development solicit development proposals for mixed use buildings along the Chevy Chase Gateway. And key action 4, create an ANC task force to work on the Chevy Chase, actually this is amended, create an ANC task force to work on the Chevy Chase Gateway small area plan and subsequent implementation, as amended by striking the language create an ANC task force and inserting establish a mechanism for the ANC. So key action 4 now will read, establish a mechanism for the ANC to work on the Chevy Chase Gateway Small Area Plan and subsequent implementation. Do I have a second? Randy, thank you. I open it up to the commissioners for discussion.
So can I, oh, sorry.
Lisa had her hand up first. Lisa?
Yes, Connie, can you explain to me when in key action item number 1, advise the Office of Planning that the ANC supports enhancements to inclusionary zoning? What specific enhancements are we supporting?
Okay. I'm just looking here to answer your question directly. So I think here, I'm trying to read the language so that we're all on the same page. So I think the work group, when we were talking about this, it says the district's inclusionary zoning program requires developers to provide approximately 10% of their residential area as affordable housing. In instances where density is increased by the comprehensive plan amendments, that percentage increases to about 20% or more. So we would like the goal to be higher than that. And then, and other enhancements, I think we were saying that I mean, I think this is what we meant by that too, is that we could include more partnerships, not just private developers, but also nonprofit developers who are not necessarily constrained by the same economics that private developers would be constrained by. And that we are in support of these kinds of expand that inclusionary zoning with our statement. Randy, can you start? I'm sorry, can you add to?
Yeah, this is really just specifying what's already being done by the council and by they're going to authorize the zoning commission to do it. But when there is an upgrade, upzoning like this, the district is now requiring 25% under an enhanced inclusionary zoning. It is an increase, to answer Lisa's question, it's an increase in the amount of required inclusionary zoning. It's currently around 10%, and the proposal that's before the council is to increase it to 20 or 25%. So we're basically just supporting that proposal that's already in the works and being considered by the council.
Okay, who was next? Was it Peter? Were you next or? Okay.
I think so, but I don't know. Lisa,
Lisa, are you done? Was that the only thing you wanted to bring up?
For right now.
Okay. And you guys can hear me now, right?
yes.
Okay.
Look, I wish we could put this in plain English so we weren't using all these terms of art. I mean, would it not serve the same purpose if we just said supports, advises the Office of Council that the ANC supports at least 25% affordable housing in the 25 in the Chevy Chase Gateway or let's see now as key as a minute. Advise the Office of Planning that the ANC supports at least 25% affordable housing in the Chevy Chase Gate in the upzone parcels of the Chevy Chase Gateway considering other requirements as well. Look, when we get to recommendation 5, this issue of these terms of art, development terms of art, I mean, actual residents need to understand what the hell we're talking about. And I mean, aren't we accomplishing the same thing in the broader debate in the city? If we just say we think that these upzone parcels ought to have a very big portion affordable housing.
Randy, did you want to reply, to respond?
Yeah.
Okay.
Inclusionary zoning, I agree, you know, it's not a term that everybody knows, but it is a term of art that is has legal implications, and it's a requirement. And I think it's helpful to have that inclusionary zoning mentioned here. I think that's the only word you're concerned about, isn't it, Peter?
Enhancements of inclusionary zoning is something that ordinary people don't understand. I'm sorry, it's a requirement by whom, of whom?
It's required in district law of developers, private developers who get the benefit of upzoning are required by law, and it's just called inclusionary zoning, to include a certain proportion of affordable housing.
I'm not going to follow my sword. Okay.
Okay, Michael.
So the only question I have is, we write here that the ANC supports these enhancements. And I guess since I wasn't part of this, and the only thing that I've been a part of in the month that I've been on the commission, is that the ANC support of major things such as this, you know, similar in process to the Lafayette school issue, we undertook to gain the understanding of what the community's view was on this. And before the ANC took a position, before we issued a resolution, we issued a survey, and we determined that 65% of the people didn't want to go to the military road school, 35% did, and we fashioned a resolution based on that input. And so the only question I'm asking is, the ANC supports enhancements. Is that support for enhancements based on just what is it? I guess I'll put it this way. What is the basis for our support within the community for this recommendation?
Randy, please go ahead.
This was also included in our comprehensive plan task force and the comprehensive plan survey that we conducted and the many meetings that we held on the comprehensive plan. It also focused on the Chevy Chase Gateway and the private development in that area. And so this is not a new recommendation. This is building on the recommendations that were made in the comprehensive plan task force and the subsequent comprehensive plan resolution that the commission passed just about a year ago. And so again, this is not new. It builds on all the things that have been done before by the commission in this specific area.
Right. And the only question I'm asking is, in that whole process, how did the commission gather the collective opinion of the community with respect to this recommendation?
We conducted a survey that has probably, I think, I've forgotten how many responses we got, but it was 700 or something like that. And we had, again, public meetings. I think there were 5 or 6 public meetings on the comprehensive plan task force where these issues were discussed. We had the task force included a large number of people with varied views. So that, I mean, it was the same kind of process that we've done in other circumstances, including the Lafayette issue.
So I guess the only question I'm asking, since I'm only a commissioner for 30 days, and this is, this is a big action item. I just want to make sure that if I vote for it, I'm voting for it consistent with the community's desires.
Well, I think it does represent certainly the expression of the community's desires and through the ANC and all of the work that it did on the comprehensive plan and the task force on racism now too. I mean, we've had lots and lots of opportunities for people to contribute input on this. I don't know that anyone has ever said anyone's objected to having an enhanced inclusionary zoning up to 25% for the private property that's developed. I think what we wanted is that if there's going to be development along the avenue, that it needs to have a considerable component of affordable housing.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just trying to make sure that I understand.
Well, I would suggest going back and looking at the comprehensive plan task force report and the comprehensive plan resolution that the ANC passed.
Okay. Thank you.
Peter, you're next again, sorry.
So I want to start by saying, I want people to notice that at the beginning of this whole process, I suggested 5 minutes. So I am not, I tried, I mean, so I want to raise two issues. The first has to do with the comprehensive plan resolution. With Michael, I am a commissioner for 30 days. Mm-hmm. The previous commission dealt with a wide variety of issues around the comprehensive plan. Either Randy or Connie, can you tell me how this differs from the comprehensive plan resolution that the ANC passed in February of 2020? If you can't, then I would suggest language that says, something to the effect that as long as this comports with the resolution, the ANC's resolution of whatever it was, February 10th, 2020, on the comprehensive plan. I'm concerned about getting involved in the debate about the comprehensive plan 1 month before the city council takes it up. A lot of us are new commissioners, and getting involved in that complicated issue is. Now, I just want to bracket that and set that aside, and I'm interested in your comments on that. One of the things about debating these cosmic issues is, of course, we're talking about a particular community. And in this case, we're talking about particular pieces of land with particular buildings on them now, with particular services. In this resolution, we talk about what we want to see in terms of affordable housing as a component on that. Mm-hmm. But there are some businesses that are, crucial to the quality of life in this community, as far as I'm concerned. And beyond that, are crucial to engendering support for changes on Connecticut Avenue. When my late wife and I moved here, we looked for a Citibank, a Starbucks, and a really good fish store. Now, the fishery is a great, great store. And it's just wonderful. And it would be a heartbreak to see that go. Blue 44 is a wonderful restaurant. Now, I understand that in these frames, you can't.
That's all in my district, by the way.
I know, I'm sorry.
Just kidding.
I'm buttering up your people. So. But, and again, are there ways to, you guys thought about this for a while, are there ways to limit or at least to voice our hope that the kinds of changes that occur incorporate some of the things that are so important to the current texture of this community. I ask that sort of as a legal matter, but also as a political matter, because you know, I can just hear the outrage if an 8-story building gets built at Livingston in Connecticut, and you know, the fishery and Blue 44 are gone. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to be too upset about Chase Bank, but I mean, anyways, I asked it really as a question, so I raised 2 issues, and I'll put my hand down.
Okay, well, what I was going to say is that
Let's let Chris talk, I think. But let Chris.
oh, Chris. Okay, yeah, Chris, please. Chris, go ahead.
No, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Sorry about that. The Office of Planning in the same document that recommended housing at the community center and the library site also recommended that the part of Connecticut Avenue from Livingston Street to the Circle be upzoned to allow moderate density residential. And this will answer one of the questions in the Q&A also. As I understand moderate density residential, that's buildings up to 50 feet tall. So one of the things that the ANC, the old ANC did as part of the comprehensive plan task force is they got the Office of Planning to agree to a small area plan. So a small area plan would theoretically, and 2 commissioners are on that here, Peter and Connie are both on it because it's in their districts. The small area plan will could modify the recommendations of the Office of Planning. So you guys might decide that maybe 40 feet is more appropriate height, or maybe on certain lots it can be higher, and certain, you know, maybe toward Livingston it can be lower. So I mean, there are all kinds of things that come up. So, but that's where this is all coming from. It's nothing that we've invented. It's something that the Office of Planning has come out with, and we're responding to. And the small area plan will also respond to it.
And Peter, this is our task in the working group on housing was housing. You're absolutely right. Other things need to be addressed as well, but we were focused on housing. And so I think the work that you and Connie are doing with the Office of Planning is going to include small businesses and preserving all of that, but that's not the scope of the working group on housing.
Okay, could I ask, so let me just ask that other question again. How does this in any way modify the resolution on the comp plan that the prior ANC passed?
It's certainly more specific, but I would have to go back. I haven't looked at it in months. I would have to go back and review that again. That was broader than this in some respects, and this is more specific in some respects.
What we're saying, so Peter, what we're saying, I think the work group, when we, talked about this issue, is if private development were to take place, we would like that percentage to be increased, affordable housing, because we were looking at the bigger comp plan where it says that there's only 1% of affordable housing west of Rock Creek Park, and that we are part of the district and we need to do our part. And then we had all of the protests about racial equity, and this is where we sit right now today. We're not sitting 30 years ago, we're sitting today in this moment in time. And so in the housing work group, we were looking for ways in which we can make that happen. And with the small area plan, that does constrain how the development looks like. So people who are worried about super tall buildings, fancy things like that, let's say, in that small area plan, we have to have our voice in there to say, that is not the vision we have going forward of how we want to see our little village look like. And so we have to share all of those views. This recommendation is just only on saying we support okay, enhancements to the inclusionary zoning, which is actually a term that the district came up with. It's not apparently not a developer's term, inclusionary zoning. And it's for us to say, we really wish to see more affordable housing. And we, in the report, say, we really hope that mixed use proposals come to us in some way so that we have a chance. It's not just going to be a free for all. We really want to have development go in the way that really will get to the vision that we hope to see as a community, not as us on the housing work group, but as a community. And this is why we said we need a charrette. We need to really build in all of this engagement. And we only just had our small area plan little advisory committee meeting only the other day. It just has begun. Now it's our time as the commission, as commissioners on this plan, to really push for that, to get these voices heard so that we can do two things. One is racial equity is key. Affordability is key. Okay, expanding housing options is key. Even in the small area plan, we heard people who were sitting there, representatives of other organizations, saying building density within their own home is really important, which we'll discuss in our later recommendations. But these are all things that people are and do wish to see. And we're really arguing in some ways over how much, what does it look like, and fears of that, which I think are legitimate fears. I mean, change is difficult. And where will the change take place? So I think we have to understand that we're not saying any more than that for this recommendation. Michael?
So then would it be advisable to say that we support enhancements of inclusionary zoning consistent with the plans developed within the small area plan or something? Do we want to tie it to what you just said? Seems to tie this. This is a recommendation. It's related in some material way to the nuts and bolts of the development of a plan within the small area plan. So do we want to tie this to say so as to put in writing that which you just said, which is this is consistent with the work that will be undertaken within the small area plan, or something
that's
like
key
that.
action 4. That's key. So all these key
I'm
actions
talking about in the recommendation itself.
Okay, but I do want to keep saying this. The housing work group, when we made our recommendation, we have the key actions, which is actions the commission takes. Those are part and parcel of the recommendation. So that's very important to know. And this will affect, the recommendations to come. The key actions matter. And so this is why I was reading it, to make sure that we have that language. So key action 4 does state that, the small area plan. And there's boundaries to that small area plan too. The Office of Planning is considering, bringing other agencies too. It's like all attention is focused on what is it that we're trying to do and for whom, as part of that small area plan. It's just the beginning of that, and to understand what that means.
No, I get it. And I read your key action point. And I'm just talking about the language of the recommendation 2. All I'm asking is, what would it be clarifying if it said that we are going to encourage significant dedicated housing and workforce housing and private development along the Chevy Chase Gateway, consistent with the Chevy Chase Gateway Small Area Plan? That's all I was asking. Does it make sense so that it's clear to people? Because you're right, change is scary, and some people, are afraid that this is going to, make Connecticut Avenue look like Wisconsin Avenue. That's not anyone's intention. But so as long as it's consistent with the small area plan, and we have a lot of work to do in the small area plan, then maybe it allays people's fears. That's all I'm suggesting.
And could I just point out, I believe that the ANC's comprehensive plan resolution said that the commission advised the Office of Planning to include a provision in the comprehensive plan that the zoning commission may not approve any proposed density changes until completion of a small area plan. And I'd hope we'd add, and in conformity with the recommendations of the small area plan. I mean, again, I asked Randy this question: how does this proposal go beyond the resolution of the ANC a year ago?
If that's a serious concern, then I move to table this recommendation to our next meeting. We're not going to get any further than just this recommendation tonight anyway.
I'm sorry. I
move to table. I move to table.
It's okay.
Is there
The
all
second
those
is
in
Lisa.
favor?
Lisa
Raise their
has second.
hand.
Oh, sorry. Are we voting?
Yeah,
To-
we're
to
voting
table-
on
to
tabling it.
table.
Mhm.
To table the motion. Okay, that's 5 and 6, 1 abstention, or all those opposed? You opposed, Michael? We can't hear you.
Michael,
I don't know what are we tabling it because it's 6 minutes to 9, or are we tabling it because we think we're at a substantive impasse?
Because Peter wanted me to look at the comprehensive plan and I haven't looked at it. So it's been months since I looked at it and I can't answer his question.
Okay,
So
so it's just,
if-
all right.
If that's the case, then we'll just have to table it.
I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry too. I think we need to be more focused in our meetings so that we can actually get things done. We're taking an enormous amount of time. And we've got a lot of people who are listening to this and wanting to say things, and we're not giving them an opportunity because we're talking too much, I think. So I'm just being very candid about this. I think we've got to be much more focused in our next meeting. And if that means giving some of these comments in advance so that we can make the changes. We made a lot of changes in these recommendations in response to comments that were made. And now we're having to deal with a whole bunch of new things. So it's been tabled, and I'm going to, unless you've got something urgent, Peter.
Well, I need to respond to that. I mean, and that is that that these are complicated and dense proposals. And I tried hard as a commissioner-elect to get the previous commission to take these up. I tried tonight to propose a streamlined version process to get us through all this. But I mean, if we're gonna hash these things out, as Connie said it in her introductory remarks, everybody got to get heard. And I was happy to do a streamlined version and get to the things where I think we've got to really still have a substantive difference. So I mean, I take exception to the notion that this is just fiddling around with words. If we're going to really delve in, we need to delve in because we need to approve it. So it's a long and difficult process, but I don't know another way. And so.
Okay, I move that we adjourn then until a later meeting, and we'll have to schedule that, and we'll talk to the commissioners and find a time for it.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor? Adjourned. Okay, thank you very much. We
Thank you,
appreciate everybody
everyone.
who's attended, and we're sorry we didn't get further in the process.
Yes.
Thank
Randy,
you. Yeah.
Randy, before we go.
Oh, your announcement.
Well, yeah, 2 things, but on that last one, can we show a hands of the votes? I didn't see all hands raised. So I don't know if we have a no or an abstention.
Chris has already left us too.
This is
Chris voted yes. Chris voted yes. Randy, you're not on video, so it was hard to know. But
I
I'm
voted
assuming yours is
yes.
Yes. Michael was the one that was unclear.
I voted to continue and not adjourn.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so 1 no.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm against adjourning.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And just for the rest of the community that's here, thank you for staying on board with us. But at the last meeting, the ANC approved the Standing Committee for Racial and Social Equity. Me and Randy are chairing that committee. And we want to announce tonight that we're seeking community volunteers. We'd like to get at least one member from each single member district. So the ANC has 7 single member districts. Each commissioner represents a district. And we want to get people with diverse, backgrounds and diverse thought leadership, but people also with a strong commitment to racial and social equity issues. And that could involve what we're talking about today: housing, police reform, as we discussed, district policies, schools, education, health. So there's a lot of things that happen in our community around this area. And we're encouraging the community to volunteer for that. We definitely have members of the former Task Force on Racism that are going to probably be joining the standing committee as well. And we like to see if there's other people in the community that would like to participate. So we will announce this also on social media, our Facebook, the listserv, Nextdoor. If you're interested, or anyone in the community that might be interested, please email myself and Randy Speck, and we will get back with you.
Okay, thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks to everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.